Hello everyone and welcome back to K's Models. My name is Greg and today we're going to be taking a look at some new products from Third Rail. Their Santa Fe E6s and their New York Central and Milwaukee Road E7s. So stick around and I'll give you my thoughts on the models, a little bit of prototype history, and then I'll show you it running around the layout. To start off, let's take a look at the Santa Fe E6s. So for a little bit of prototype background history, Santa Fe had 7 of these engines, consisting of 4 A units and 3 B units. They were delivered from 1940 to 1941, making them the final pre-war order of diesels from EMD. Before that, they also had E1s and E3s delivered. These engines were primarily found in the Midwestern and California routes and served until around 1968 when they were then retired. Unfortunately, none of the Santa Fe E6s were preserved, but there are 3 other E6s still around if you would like to see them in real life. Now, over the course of their service lives, Santa Fe did modify these engines quite a bit, and the versions that Third Rail has delivered, these are the as-delivered ones with no roof modifications or Mars light on the front or blanked out number boards. Now, for comparison's sake, we do have a key import 2-rail modified Santa Fe E6 AB set, which I'll put up on screen now. Same road number as number 15. So you can see they're a lot different, and you could also see the difference in the finish that was put on them by the 2 different manufacturers. Alright, now let's move on to the New York Central engines. So the New York Central E7s, this number 4034 was part of the second order for E7s from EMD. Now, as for the A unit, this engine was part of the second order of E7s from the New York Central, and the B unit, which is numbered 4104, was a part of the last order for E7s, which composed entirely of B units, which was between the years 1945 and 1948. These engines are in their as-delivered scheme for their correct order. The previous order of E7As had the Beauty Queen scheme, as it's now been dubbed, which was pretty much the inverted colors of this, where the main color was the lighter gray and the darker gray was in the lightning stripe. Those ones were used mainly on the 20th Century Limited before it was given its diesel era redo, which then would go into the scheme that's on the screen right now. One key difference in the second order of E7A units and the first order of E7A units was the second order had the larger number boards on the nose, which is correctly modeled on this engine. If you look at the first order of engines, they had much smaller number boards, which are more akin to the ones found on the E6s, like shown before on the Santa Fe engines. In total, the New York Central would go on to own 36 A units and 14 B units as part of their orders. These were then used on the Great Steel Fleet trains and were also used with their later orders of E8As and would be frequently seen in ABA configurations and would pull trains such as the 20th Century, the Empire State Express, and their other famous trains. Alright, now let's move on to the Milwaukee Road. So the Milwaukee Road had 10 E6As built. They didn't have any B units. These were delivered in 1946, just after World War II, and were meant to pull trains such as the Hiawatha's and the other Twin City trains. Now, where the Milwaukee Road engines differed from other Milwaukee Road E units, where these were pretty much only used on these Hiawatha trains, as the later E9s and subsequent deliveries of that specification, they were delivered with head-end power and steam generators due to Union Pacific standards when the Milwaukee Road was using Union Pacific trackage rights for their intercity trains and also for use in commuter service. Alright, now with the prototype history out of the way, let's go to the actual models. So these were delivered recently, within past 6 months, I want to say. Actually, I think it was more than that. We've had these for some time now, I just haven't gotten around to reviewing them. So as with all third rail diesels and engines in general, these engines are equipped with Rail Sounds 5 and can motors in the center of the engine. Now this is one of the first times where I've seen third rail actually do powered B units, which is why we got A-B sets of everything that we could, including the New York Central one. But as mentioned before, Milwaukee Road never had B units, so that's an AA set. Now, once again, as standard on third rail diesels, these engines have a belt drive down into the fuel tanks, where it then goes out via U-joint to the trucks. Now, I've never had problems with this belt drive. It lasts a very long time. I've only replaced a belt once, and that was on the Santa Fe 484 that previously made an appearance on this channel that I converted to ERR Cruise, but that engine's from 1998, around there. So, I mean, and technically it didn't even fail. I just replaced it out of preventative maintenance. It's a very solid powertrain and enables for some, it allows for pretty smooth slow speed operation, which I like, and also runs very consistently throughout the whole speed curve. And also what it allows for, which I really like, is you can have full cab interiors, because there is no tower motor sticking straight through the middle of the cab like how we see on MTH and Lionel engines. Also making an appearance here is full LED lighting. This was something that was also seen on the Rocket, which up in the top right corner I'll link a review to, and also down below. So, one thing that I've noticed with LED lighting, and you know, it's their first venture into LED lighting, so I guess it's alright, but at the time where these engines would have been delivered on the prototype, they wouldn't have had this cool white glow to the headlights, almost bluish. So if it were up to me, I would swap that with a golden white LED, something that looks more like a incandescent bulb, like how it would have been on the prototype. Just a more realistic hue to the white. That's something I've changed on other models where it would be like, too blue for my liking. Some early Broadway Limited steam engines are like that, and diesels, and I've changed them where they would just be actually blue. One other thing of note on the E7s, the closed pilot is an option. They, from the manufacturer, come with a open pilot and knuckle couplers. These engines come with knuckle couplers from the factory, and as with almost everything else in our fleet, we've converted that to KDs. And between the engines, there was quite a gap, and obviously that's not very prototypical. So, in order to close up that gap and get it as close as possible, I made a drawbar system to go between all these engines. This is something I've done on Lionel engines as well. It's fairly simple. I just took a regular third rail KD mount, which these had mounting holes for, which I like, and is something that I'm seeing is kind of the standard on third rail products, which is nice, since most of our stuff is KDs. It's only just recently, with very recent third rail products like the North Coast Limited, the Hiawatha, and the Rocket, where we've left the knuckle couplers on because, one, they left the thumbtacks off on the bottom because those don't look good at all, but they left them off, and so you don't notice the knuckle couplers now, and they don't open on their own as much. It was that was another huge problem that we had with those couplers, was they weren't very reliable. But either way, because the trains that these engines were going to pull anyway, with the exception of the Milwaukee Road units, since the trains they were going to pull were already converted to KDs, I just put KDs on the rear of these engines. I had to use step-up upper shelf KDs just for the sake of I didn't really have the correct KD mounts for these engines. I just had what was lying around. I just have a couple bags of these mounts laying around from previous projects, so I've just been reusing them, and it came out fine. The coupler height is perfectly manageable. So yeah, I've had no coupler height issues since converting them. And I just remembered I went completely off track there for a second. Going back to the pilots, these, like I said before, from the manufacturer, had open pilots on the front for knuckle couplers, but they also have an open pilot with a slightly smaller opening for KD couplers. But if you want a closed front to it, like how we have on all of our engines here, that's also available. Now, unfortunately, and this was something that Third Rail pointed out to us beforehand and made clear to us, the E7s had a bit of a clearancing issue with their closed pilots. So when you went to mount them, when I went to mount mine, the holes didn't line up, and it didn't really look right when it was when I tried to first put it on. So I had to grind away a bit with a Dremel to, and it's brass. They're brass parts, so it's not that hard to grind much of it away. And if you grind too much of it away, it's not that big of a deal, since it's just two screws going up, and it's not going to be pushing or pulling on anything, so it won't fall out of place. But yeah, if you get these engines and you want to put the closed pilots on the front of them, that's just something you need to be aware of. Now, this run isn't their first run of these E7s. They have actually done these before, and we do have a set of them which I'll be bringing into shot now. Now, there are quite a few key differences between this run and the previous run, in that noticed, like I mentioned before, powered B units. Now, this helps a lot with putting together lash ups and stuff, because one problem that the last E7s had was the B units were too light due to them not having any motor or electronic in them, and they tended to bounce around a lot on switches, especially if you don't have the straightest track. One other thing that is a lot more noticeable and helps a lot, especially if you're running heavy trains with heavy lash ups like the earlier Golden Gate Depot 20th Century. That's a heavy train. The U-joints that go from the belt drive goes to the trucks, it's now made of metal. It's no longer made of plastic. I never had this problem, but apparently a couple of other people did with layouts with tougher grades than mine. Well, actually, any grade. Our layout is pretty much totally flat. And longer trains was that these U-joints were snapping, because these also have traction tires on them. They produce a lot of grip, and that large motor has a lot of power behind it. And when you're pulling a heavy train like that, that's a lot of strain on that U-joint to pull a heavy full-length passenger train up a grade. So a problem that they were having was those U-joints were snapping, and they did provide metal replacements. I did replace the U-joints on this set, just out of precautionary measure. And if you have this earlier run of E7s with the plastic U-joints, get into contact with Third Rail, and they should be able to send you a set of metal replacements from the new run. Also, like I mentioned before, on the prototype history, the New York Central ones, correctly modeled on the older run as well. You'll notice that the number boards on the older ones are smaller, as was per prototype per this road number. You'll notice and if you look over at the newer one on the right, they're a lot bigger. That was the most notable difference in those two orders of E7s. One other thing of note on the trucks and drivetrain of these models is they They do have Sprung Trucks, which is cool to see on powered 6-axle engines like these. Usually we only see that on freight cars in O-scale. So that should help with the ride on these, and especially if you don't have the smoothest track. One other thing that I like to see being done on these models is the easily accessible 9-volt battery doors and the program run switches. Lionel's been doing this for some time now, and I'm happy to see Third Rail is doing it as well. One problem that Third Rail engines had wasn't much of a problem, as it was more of a just an annoyance for us, where we're not the biggest fans of having these 9-volt batteries in these models. That's on TMCC engines and Legacy, but with Lionel they don't give you a 9-volt battery. But on these E6s and some of the E7s, the Third Rail gives you a 9-volt battery, and that's the case on pretty much almost every other recent Third Rail model we've gotten. They have that 9-volt battery in them, and because there may be some times where there might be years between some models see runtime, which I know isn't very healthy for the electronics on these models. It's just practice for that we do is we try and take these batteries out as soon as we get them. So thankfully the battery would be stored right in here where the underneath the steam generator detail, and thankfully that was really easy to take out, and yeah, I got some free 9-volt batteries with these models. Good deal. Alright, so that about wraps it up for this review. I think I've said pretty much everything I need to say about these. Overall, I really do like these models despite their slight shortcomings, but I'm glad to see efforts being made to innovate in the O-scale 3-rail market. So without further ado, let's get to running these. The Milwaukee Road unit, though, I'm not going to be running. If you want to see it run, it had a lot of feature time in the Hiawatha review. I'll put a link to that up in the corner of the screen now. As I was about to move out there, this U-joint decided it no longer wanted to be attached to the truck anymore. So I move it there, just put it up a notch. Yeah, very good. So I'll pull this one off and put on the other one. I think this engine doesn't have much runtime, so I think that's something that I just missed from before the review, so I'm pretty sure it's just a loose screw. I'll fix that and it should be pretty simple. Alright, so that about wraps it up for today's video. If you liked it, leave a like and be sure to subscribe to see more videos from me from the future. So, thanks for watching and I hope to see you guys in the next one.